This is the Harlem Renaissance project by James Walker and David Lenenburg. In this presentation, David and I will be covering famous Harlem Renaissance artists such as Claude McKay, Augusta Savage, Laura Willer, Norman Lewis, and Duke Ellington. Claude McKay was born in Jamaica on September 15, 1889. At the time, he was educated by his older brother, as it was hard for blacks to receive an education at the time due to racist laws. He attended Tuskegee University in Alabama, and after he graduated, he set the tone for all of Harlem Renaissance. Home to Harlem was one of Claude McKay's most known pieces. It was written about a boy who was a protagonist in Harlem, and he moved to London, and then how race riots inspired the man to return back to Harlem. And as he came back to Harlem, he noticed all the prejudice against colored people, and how at the time it was just very hard to be a colored person and live in the United States. The American economy and society was struggling very bad in terms of how racist it was and how biased it was against one race. Harlem Glory was also one of Claude McKay's most known, well-written pieces. He wrote this back in the 1940s to portray life as a black during the Great Depression, and how terrible it already was before the Great Depression and how life was during and after the Great Depression. He talked about all of the parties that blacks attended and all the jazz parties and all of the events that they just created as a community and all the fun times they had in this deep, dark time. It touched on clashes of society and how societal movements were created to help create equality among these races, and it touched on just the community of blacks as a whole and how they were forming to show that they were not terrible people and how they were also as smart and hardworking as every other race was. Augusta Savage was also a very well-known Harlem Renaissance artist. She was born in Green Cove Springs, Florida on February 29, 1892. She was an African-American sculptor and equal rights activist. Her most famous sculpture includes Gammon and the Harp. Gammon was one of Augusta Savage's most early pieces that she created. This helped win her a scholarship to travel to Europe and study more about her craft and sculpting. This was inspired by her young nephew, Ellis Ford, who was a struggling black kid in the community who was also homeless. The word gammon is French for street urchin. At the time, blacks were being very belittled, and there were so many of them that were homeless because they could not get a job, that this very well portrays how life was and how sad it was to see these young children struggling in the streets. The harp was one of her most well-known pieces that was ever created, but sadly it is not around anymore. It was destroyed when the fair that she kept it at was destroyed because there was no funding to keep it alive. Augusta was influenced to make this piece by James Johnson. He created a song called Lift Every Voice, which was basically just glorifying the art of the black community and how well they influenced the music culture. The statue represents 12 black singers, as you can see in a line, and how it's going up. And the hand that wraps around is the hand of God, also, and the knee of God. And the man up front that has a music pedestal in his hand, it represents the foot pedal of the harp. The whole statue as itself just represents the black community and how good of a community they were, but how belittled they also were. Laura Willer was born in Hartford, Connecticut on May 16, 1887. She was an American painter who depicted African American subjects to glorify their beauty during this rough, dark time. She taught art and music at a university as well. While teaching, she pursued her artistic ambitions, creating portraits of many people to show the world how beautiful they were, no matter their skin color or gender. Anna Washington Derry was a portrait that she created to highlight the beauty of African Americans and women. She praised colored people through these paintings and tried to teach the world of how beautiful they were, no matter their skin color. She created another portrait of a lady We don't know her name, but it was also used to glorify colored people at the time and just show how influential and beautiful they really were, no matter what color their skin was or where they came from. Norman Lewis was born on July 23, 1909 in Harlem, New York. He was a very important member of the abstract expressionism movement. His art helped inspire the black urban life as we know it today. He was taught and influenced by Augusta Savage. Migrating Birds by Norman Lewis allowed him to receive the Carnegie International Award. The painting was an oil canvas painting which used representations to show abstractions. This revealed Lewis's commitment to the natural world and how dedicated he was in trying to change it. Evening Rendezvous by Norman Lewis was a deeply political piece of art. There were many forbidden types of paintings during the time, and he really pushed the line on this one. If you look at the depiction, it's really mocking the claimed patriotism of the Klan and how they claimed to be patriotic but were super hateful against people that were not their race. Duke Ellington was born on April 29, 1899 in Washington, D.C. He was a major figure in the history of jazz and helped influence many people as we know today. He made distinctive ensemble sounds in his work while he was in his band. He performed in Broadway nightclubs in the 1920s along with many other places. The song It Don't Mean a Thing by Duke Ellington really gave him that boost in turning him from just a creator of music into being a prodigy. This song was one of the newest songs of its kind. It had not really been seen. Duke Ellington was not really keen on featuring vocalists, but at the time he decided to give it a chance. And it turned out that this would be one of the greatest decisions of his life. This song really gave him the push from being just a band maker to being a prophet, and really just drove him to be what he is today and what we know him as now. The song Take a Train by Duke Ellington was not written by him. He actually got this song from a kid named Billy Strayhorn who lived in Pittsburgh. He was a soda jerk and drugstore delivery boy by day and musician by night. He had a dream to be a musician just as well. The whole concept of the song was if you lived in New York, you most likely did not have a car, so therefore you had to take the train. If you were really unlucky, you had to ride the A train, which was the lowest rank of subways. It was the cheapest and poorest means of transportation. It was dirty and broken down and was at the lowest line of the 20 subways they had at the time. This is our conclusion on the Harlem Renaissance and how it has affected society as we know it today. Thank you.